Chapter 5, Parampara, Knowledge through Disciplic Succession. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivashvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivashvan Manave Praha Manur Ikshvakave Bravit. The Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivashvan, and Vivashvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, verse 1. Many ages ago, Krishna imparted the divine knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to Vivashvan, the god of the sun. To the best of our knowledge, the sun is a very hot place, and we do not consider it possible for anyone to live there. It is not even possible to approach the sun very closely with these bodies. However, from the Vedic literatures we can understand that the sun is a planet just like this one, but that everything there is composed of fire. Just as this planet is predominantly composed of earth, there are other planets which are predominantly composed of fire, water, and air. The living entities on these various planets acquire bodies composed of elements in accordance with the predominating element on the planet. Therefore, those beings who live on the sun have bodies which are composed of fire. Of all beings on the sun, the principal personality is a god by the name of Vivashvan. He is known as the sun god, Surya Narayan. On all planets there are principal personalities, just as in the United States the chief person is the president. From the history called the Mahabharata, we understand that formerly there was only one king on this planet by the name of Maharaj Bharat. He ruled some 5,000 years ago, and the planet was named after him. Subsequently, the earth has become divided into so many different countries. In this way, there is usually one and sometimes many controllers of the various planets in the universe. From this first verse of the 4th chapter, we learn that millions of years ago, Sri Krishna imparted the knowledge of Karma Yoga to the sun god Vivashvan. Sri Krishna, who imparts the teachings of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, here indicates that these teachings are not at all new, but were enunciated many years ago on a different planet. Vivashvan, in his turn, repeated these teachings to his son Manu. In turn, Manu imparted the knowledge to his disciple Ikshvaku. Maharaj Ikshvaku was a great king and forefather of Lord Ramachandra. The point being made here is that if one wants to learn Bhagavad Gita and profit by it, there is a process for understanding it, and that process is described here. It is not that Krishna is speaking Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna for the first time. It is estimated by Vedic authorities that the Lord imparted these divine instructions to Vivashvan some 400 million years ago. From the Mahabharata, we understand that Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna some 5,000 years ago. Before Arjuna, the teachings were handed down by disciplic succession, but over such a long period of time, the teachings became lost. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshyo vidu sa kalenaha mahata yogo nashta parantapa sa evayam maya te dya yoga prokta paratana bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasyam hi etad uttamam. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, verses 2 to 3. In Bhagavad Gita, a number of yoga systems are delineated: Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga, and therefore it is here called yoga. The word yoga means to link up, and the idea is that in yoga we link our consciousness to God. It is a means for reuniting with God, or re-establishing our relationship with Him. In the course of time, this yoga imparted by Sri Krishna was lost. Why is this? Were there no learned sages at the time Sri Krishna was speaking to Arjuna? No, there were many sages present at the time. By lost, it is meant that the purport of Bhagavad Gita was lost. Scholars may give their own interpretation of Bhagavad Gita, analyzing it according to their own whims. But that is not Bhagavad Gita. This is the point that Sri Krishna is stressing, and a student of Bhagavad Gita should note it. A person may be a very good scholar from the material point of view, but that does not qualify him to comment on Bhagavad Gita. In order to understand Bhagavad Gita, we have to accept the principle of disciplic succession, Parampara. We must enter into the spirit of Bhagavad Gita and not approach it simply from the viewpoint of erudition. Of all people, why did Sri Krishna select Arjuna as a recipient of this knowledge? Arjuna was not a great scholar at all, nor was he a yogi, meditator, or a holy man. He was a warrior, about to engage in battle. There were many sages living at the time, and Sri Krishna could have given Bhagavad Gita to them. The answer is that despite being an ordinary man, Arjuna had one great qualification: Bhakto si me sakha cheti. You are my devotee and my friend. This was Arjuna's exceptional qualification, a qualification which the sages did not have. Arjuna knew that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he surrendered himself unto Him, accepting Him as his spiritual master. Unless one is a devotee of Lord Krishna's, he cannot possibly understand Bhagavad Gita. If one wants to understand Bhagavad Gita, he cannot take help from other methods. He must understand it as prescribed in Bhagavad Gita itself, by understanding it as Arjuna understood it. If we wish to understand Bhagavad Gita in a different way, or give an individual interpretation, that may be an exhibition of our scholarship, but it is not Bhagavad Gita. By scholarship, we may be able to manufacture some theory of Bhagavad Gita, just as Mahatma Gandhi did when he interpreted Bhagavad Gita in an effort to support his theory of nonviolence. How is it possible to prove nonviolence from Bhagavad Gita? The very theme of Bhagavad Gita involves Arjuna's reluctance to fight, and Krishna's inducing him to kill his opponents. In fact, Krishna tells Arjuna that the battle had already been decided by the Supreme, that the people who were assembled on the battlefield were predestined never to return. It was Krishna's program that the warriors were all destined to die, and Krishna gave Arjuna the opportunity of taking the credit of conquering them. If fighting is proclaimed a necessity in Bhagavad Gita, how is it possible to prove nonviolence from it? Such interpretations are attempts to distort Bhagavad Gita. As soon as the Gita is interpreted according to the motive of an individual, the purpose is lost. It is stated that we cannot attain the conclusion of the Vedic literature by the force of our own logic or argument. There are many things which do not come within the jurisdiction of our sense of logic. As far as scriptures are concerned, we find different scriptures describing the absolute truth in different ways. If we analyze all of them, there will be bewilderment. There are also many philosophers with different opinions, and they're always contradicting one another. If the truth cannot be understood by reading various scriptures, by logical argument, or philosophical theories, then how can it be attained? The fact is that the wisdom of the absolute truth is very confidential, but if we follow the authorities, it can be understood. In India there are disciplic successions coming from Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka, Vishnuswami, and other great sages. The Vedic literatures are understood through the superior spiritual masters. Arjuna understood Bhagavad Gita from Krishna, and if we wish to understand it, we have to understand it from Arjuna, not from any other source. If we have any knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, we have to see how it tallies with the understanding of Arjuna. If we understand Bhagavad Gita in the same way that Arjuna did, we should know that our understanding is correct. This should be the criteria for our studying of Bhagavad Gita. If we actually want to receive benefit from Bhagavad Gita, we have to follow this principle. Bhagavad Gita is not an ordinary book of knowledge, which we can purchase from the marketplace, read, and merely consult a dictionary to understand. This is not possible. If it were, Krishna would never have told Arjuna that the science was lost. It is not difficult to understand the necessity of going through the disciplic succession to understand Bhagavad Gita. If we wish to be a lawyer, an engineer, or doctor, we have to receive knowledge from the authoritative lawyers, engineers, and doctors. A new lawyer has to become an apprentice of an experienced lawyer, or a young man studying to be a doctor has to become an intern and work with those who are already licensed practitioners. Our knowledge of a subject cannot be perfectionalized unless we receive it through authoritative sources. There are two processes for attaining knowledge. One is inductive and the other is deductive. The deductive method is considered to be more perfect. We may take a premise such as all men are mortal, and no one need discuss how man is mortal. It is generally accepted that this is the case. The deductive conclusion is, Mr. Johnson is a man, therefore Mr. Johnson is mortal. But how is the premise that all men are mortal arrived at? Followers of the inductive method wish to arrive at this premise through experiment and observations. We may thus study that this man died and that man died, etc. And after seeing that so many men have died, we may conclude or generalize that all men are mortal. But there is a major defect in this inductive method, and that is that our experience is limited. We may never have seen a man who is not mortal, but we are judging this on our own personal experience, which is finite. Our senses have limited power, and there are so many defects in our conditional state. The inductive process, consequently, is not always perfect, whereas the deductive process from a source of perfect knowledge is perfect. The Vedic process is such a process. Although the authority is acknowledged, there are many passages in Bhagavad Gita which appear to be dogmatic. For instance, in the 7th chapter, Sri Krishna says, Mata parataram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya mayi sarvam idam protam sutre mani gana eva. O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me, as pearls are strung on a thread. Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter, verse 7. Sri Krishna is saying that there is no authority greater than him, and this appears to be very dogmatic. If I say there is no one greater than me, people would think, "Oh, Swamiji is very proud." If a man who is conditioned by so many imperfections says that he is the greatest of all, he blasphemes. But Krishna can say this, for we can understand from the histories that even while he was on this earth, he was considered the greatest personality of his time. Indeed, he was the greatest in all fields of activity. According to the Vedic system, knowledge which is achieved from the greatest authority is to be considered perfect. According to the Vedas, there are three kinds of proof: pratyaksha, anuman, and shabda. One is by direct visual perception. If a person is sitting in front of me, I can see him sitting there, and my knowledge of his sitting there is received through my eyes. The second method, anuman, is auricular. We may hear children playing outside, and by hearing we can conjecture that they are there. And the third method is the method of taking truths from a higher authority. Such a saying as "man is mortal" is accepted from higher authorities. Everyone accepts this, but no one has experienced that all men are mortal. By tradition we have to accept this. If someone asks, "Who found this truth first? Did you discover it?" it is very difficult to say. All we can say is that the knowledge is coming down and that we accept it. Out of the three methods of acquiring knowledge, the Vedas say that the third method, that of receiving knowledge from higher authorities, is the most perfect. Direct perception is always imperfect, especially in the conditional stage of life. By direct perception we can see that the sun is just like a disk, no larger than the plate we eat on. From scientists, however, we come to understand that the sun is many thousands of times larger than the earth. So what are we to accept? Are we to accept the scientific proclamation, the proclamation of authorities, or our own experience? Although we cannot ourselves prove how large the sun is, we accept the verdict of astronomers. In this way we are accepting the statements of authorities in every field of our activities. From newspapers and radio we also understand that such and such events are taking place in China and India, and other places all around the earth. We're not experiencing these events directly, and we don't know that such events are actually taking place. But we accept the authority of the newspapers and radio. We have no choice but to believe authorities in order to get knowledge. And when the authority is perfect, our knowledge is perfect. According to the Vedic sources, of all authorities, Krishna is the greatest and most perfect. Mata parataram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya. Not only does Krishna proclaim himself to be the highest authority, but this is also accepted by great sages and scholars of Bhagavad Gita. If we do not accept Krishna as authority and take his words as they are, we cannot derive any benefit from Bhagavad Gita. It is not dogmatic, it is a fact. If we study scrutinizingly what Krishna says, we will find that it is right. Even scholars like Shankaracharya, who have different opinions from the personality of Godhead, admit that Krishna is Svayam Bhagavan. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Vedic knowledge is not a recent discovery. It is all old, revealed knowledge. Krishna refers to it as Puratana, which means ancient. Krishna says that millions of years before he spoke this yoga to the sun god, and we do not know how many millions of years before that he spoke it to someone else. This knowledge is always being repeated. Just as summer, autumn, winter, and spring are repeated every year, our fund of knowledge is very poor
We do not even know the history of this planet more than 5,000 years back, but the Vedic literatures give us histories extending millions of years ago. Just because we have no knowledge of what happened 3,000 years ago on this planet, we cannot conclude that there was no history then. Of course, one can disclaim the historical validity of Krishna. One may say that Krishna, according to Mahabharata, lived 5,000 years ago, and this being the case, there is no possibility of his having spoken Bhagavad Gita to the sun god so many millions of years before. If I said that I gave a speech on the sun some millions of years ago to the sun god, people would say, Swamiji is speaking some nonsense. But this is not the case with Krishna, for he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whether we believe that Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to the sun god or not, this fact is being accepted by Arjuna. Arjuna accepted Krishna as the Supreme Lord, and therefore he knew that it was quite possible for Krishna to have spoken to someone millions of years before. Although Arjuna personally accepts the statements of Sri Krishna, in order to clarify the situation for people who would come after him, he asks, Aparam bhavato janma, param janma vivashvata, katam etad vijanayam, tvam ado proktavan iti. The sun god, Vivishvan, is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, verse 4. Actually, this is a very intelligent question, and Krishna answers it in this way. Bahuni me vyatitani, janmani tava charjuna, tani aham veda sarvani, natvam veta parantapa. Many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, verse 5. Although Krishna is God, he incarnates many, many times. Arjuna, being a living entity, also takes his birth many, many times. The difference between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and a living entity is Tani Aham Veda Sarvani. Krishna remembers the events of his past incarnations, whereas the living entity cannot remember. That is one of the differences between God and man. God is eternal, and we are also eternal. But the difference is that we are always changing our bodies. At death, we forget the events of our lifetime. Death means forgetfulness, that's all. At night, when we go to sleep, we forget that we are the husband of such and such a wife and the father of such and such children. We forget ourselves in sleep, but when we wake up, we remember, oh, I am so-and-so, and I must do such and such. It is a fact that in our previous lives, we had other bodies with other families, fathers, mothers, and so on, in other countries. But we have forgotten all of these. We might have been dogs or cats, or men or gods. Whatever we were, we have now forgotten. Despite all these changes, as living entities, we are eternal. Just as in previous lives we have prepared for this body. In this lifetime we are preparing for another body. We get our bodies according to our karma or activities. Those who are in the mode of goodness are promoted to higher planets and a higher status of life. Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, verse 14. Those who die in the mode of passion remain on earth, and those who die in the mode of ignorance may fall into the animal species of life, or may be transferred to a lower planet. Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, verse 15. This is the process that has been going on, but we forget it. At one time, Indra, the king of heaven, committed an offense at the feet of his spiritual master, and his spiritual master cursed him to take the birth of a hog. Thus the throne of the heavenly kingdom became empty, as Indra went to earth to become a hog. Seeing the situation, Brahma came to earth and addressed the hog. "My dear sir, you have become a hog on this planet Earth. I have come to deliver you. Come with me at once." But the hog replied, "Oh, I cannot go with you. I have so many responsibilities. My children, wife, and this nice hog society." Even though Brahma promised to take him back to heaven, Indra, in the form of a hog, refused. This is called forgetfulness. Similarly, Lord Sri Krishna comes and says to us, "What are you doing in this material world? Sarva dhaman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Come to me and I'll give you all protection." But we say, "I don't believe you, sir. I have more important business here." This is the position of the conditioned soul, forgetfulness. This forgetfulness is quickly dissipated by following in the path of disciplic succession.